Okay, so now we need to make our first distinction. We got our American monomyth here. That's great. That's our first level. The first two categories of a hero, and these are broad categories. So all of the sub archetypes we talk about, or you might have heard me talk about, um, can be, we've got our aspirational heroes and our cathartic motivational heroes. Now, the sub archetypes run within those. Some sub archetypes don't really work so well as aspirational, but for the most part, they can be either one or the other. Now, the aspirational hero, because I talk about it so much, let's go ahead and clear this up. The aspirational hero is a hero. It's not a hero who's perfect. The aspirational hero can have flaws. They can have real challenges. They can have development. In fact, they should have character growth. They should have character development. A lot of times when I talk about the aspirational hero, people think, oh, it's just so flat and two-dimensional. And these are usually people who just don't want to think about an aspirational hero because they're, on some level, they're just too nihilistic in themselves. The fact, though, is that you desperately need aspirational heroes. They're going to be fewer by necessity. They're going to be fewer aspirational heroes in any one shared universe than there are the cathartic motivationals, and I'll get to those in a second. But the aspirational heroes are characters who are just born good. They're just good. They're just decent. They're just essentially good people from the start. They don't have to suffer any tragedy that makes. They can suffer tragedies, but the tragedies themselves don't make them good. Don't make them, and then that's how I realized that I really need to dedicate my life to this, and be a better person. No, they have that good heart from the beginning. And they're hard they're hard for a lot of people to write. I don't think they're hard to write at all, but they're harder for a lot of people to write because your average lessons, your average school of writing says, take your character and they should have, these things should be wrong with them, and then they learn this, and then, character development. It's easy to write character development in which characters learn how to become better people. That's a great story. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you don't have an aspirational hero or two or three or whatever in your universe, then characters don't have a standard for which to strive. They don't have that standard. So Superman, Captain America, Luke Skywalker, He-Man, All Might, as David Kalkayan said, Hercules, Disney's Hercules, these are aspirational heroes. They just have that good heart from the beginning. They there's a sheer goodness about them. They believe that there's always a right thing to do. They believe that it's always worth it to do the right thing. They never, ever question whether or not they should do the right thing. Now, sometimes they might question which is the right thing to do. For example, I mentioned Superman for All Seasons recently, just a few minutes ago. And yeah, that story is about Lex Luthor trying to trick Superman into thinking maybe the world's better off without you. Maybe the world's better off without, and it's young Superman. At no point is Superman ever thinking, screw the world. The world doesn't need. I don't care. Does it even deserve to be saved? I mean, no. That's like Zack Snyder, Man of Steel levels of ridiculousness. So a aspirational hero can be fooled sometimes. They can be challenged. They can be a little confused as to maybe what the right thing to do is here, but they always know that there's a good right way to do. And in an aspirational hero story, as I've said before, you never want to put them in the situation in which they have to do something bad. They have to cross the line. And it's not that no aspirational hero can ever kill. I mean, Captain America certainly used a gun when he was in the war. Luke Skywalker, different stories of he's, trying to fight and defend innocence. He's going to have to sometimes maybe deal a killing blow. It depends on the story. Superman should never, ever kill. Batman should never, ever kill. He-Man should never, well, I won't say, depending on the type of story you tell of He-Man. Certainly, like, the 80s style cartoon, He-Man should never, ever kill. If you were telling a little bit more of an adult story like the mini comics or whatever, and there's war or whatever, it depends on the story. It depends on the way it's presented. In general, you wouldn't let an aspirational hero kill, but like I said, it depends on the character, depends on the story. The point is that they're never out to kill. They're always trying to save the innocent. They're always trying to even save the criminals from themselves, if that's at all possible. So, playing into Batman, not killing him. And some people were like, okay, but seriously, though, he's got to kill the Joker, right? I mean, the Joker's like, it makes sense for him to kill the Joker, though, because the Joker's really bad. No, if you make any concession there, if you start to make any concession, then you're saying, basically what you're saying is, we should always do the right thing unless this. Here's the line in which it's okay for us not to do the right. Or here's the line in which the wrong thing is actually the right thing to do. Once you make that concession, it's just a matter of time before that line gets closer and closer and closer and closer to you until you don't have to really do much work on yourself at all as a human being because it's all relevant. It's all that's the slope that happens. And the aspirational heroes are there to show us that no, there's a standard. The standard exists. The standard is fixed. It's not realistic that we're going to meet that standard, but we need to keep sights on that standard. And that's what the aspirational heroes are for. There is one of the sub-archetypes is the paragon, and the paragon can only ever be aspirational. So a lot of the characters I just mentioned are the paragons. Superman, Captain America, Luke Skywalker. These are paragons, meaning that in their universe they serve as like they're on the Wheaties box of their universe. They are inspirational to all who know them. But you can have a character like Naruto, for example, who's aspirational, 100% aspirational. He never ever entertains the idea of doing the wrong thing. He's got his ninja way. He wants to do everything right. He wants to do, but he's also a trickster and a numbskull. And he's given to emotional outbursts and whatever, and he fails a lot and he screws up a lot, and he's but he never questions whether or not there's a right thing to do and whether or not he should do the right thing, and he inspires a lot of people by his determination in that. But he's not a paragon, right? So all paragons are aspirational, but not necessarily all aspirational heroes are paragons. That's just a little distinction there. All right, so we've covered the aspirational hero. We're still just dealing with our two major distinctions of heroes. So if you're losing me a little bit, or or if I'm losing you a little bit, excuse me, we're talking about the American monomyth, which for the most part is the American distinction of the superhero, and we're just dividing it into two main categories. We're going to look at more finer categories in a second, but we're just looking at two main categories: the aspirational hero, which we just covered, and if you have questions, we can talk about that more. And in a second, we're going to look at the cathartic motivational, which is the second big major category of heroes. But first, I got a super chat here from Studio Super. Thank you so much. He said the aspirational hero can be hard for a lot of people to write because they can overcomplicate things when the nature of the aspirational hero is simple. They know what they have to do. The challenge is how to do it. Exactly. And I've talked about this somewhat recently before, and you put that beautifully there. A good example of that is if you want to challenge Superman, be like, oh, he's so overpowered. It's so not even interesting. What do you mean it's not interesting? It might be crazy hard to hurt Superman, but you know what? You can challenge him in that he needs to save all of these people. There's that great. I don't love the Nolan Batman movies, but there are some really great scenes in them. And that scene in Dark Knight at the end with the two boats, the two ferries, and the bomb on both of them, and the Joker trying to show Batman that see, everybody would just kill. See, look, they're gonna kill, and it's like one is the convicts and one is the school children. And look, even you should know that we need to kill the convicts one, right? Stop trying to pretend that there's a good and right thing to do. We're all just it's all just anarchy or whatever. And the convicts themselves, refuse to hit the button to throw up to blow up the ferry for the kids. They throw it out the window, and it was the convicts themselves who made that choice. It wasn't the guards; it was the convicts. A beautiful scene, really. For all the problems I have with Nolan's films, some of those scenes are just wow. That was really great. And the Joker has to learn that lesson, right? Batman's like, you need to believe in people more. So let's move on now to the second major example of hero division. So we talked about the aspirational hero. Now let's talk about the cathartic motivational. And I say the cathartic motivational, this is a very careful term. I want to teach this in my classes. Students like to just kind of shorthand it and say, yeah, the cathartic hero, the cathartic hero. It's like, no. You can't just say cathartic hero because that's a different kind of character in general. cathartic hero, you might as well be talking about Hamlet, or a tragic hero or something like that. And those characters exist and they serve their purpose, but they're not heroes. You can call about them hero in terms of being a protagonist, but not a hero in terms of a monomyth, because the cathartic hero just exhibits a lot of moral failings and shows us, don't do that, don't do what that guy did. So like Hamlet, for example, he's told very clearly at the beginning of the play, the ghost of his dead father, for crying out loud, comes to him and says, I was murdered, you need to avenge me. So he knows what he has to do. It's good to his father's soul. It's also good for the kingdom. He's the prince of the kingdom. If he needs, if the kingdom's to be saved, he needs to go avenge his father's death. But he spends the whole freaking play going, should I really though? I mean, really? Me? Should I be the one to do that? Let me just do this little test. All right, let me do this test. All right, now let me try this one more test. And the whole time he's doing this, the whole time he's avoiding doing what he has to do, people around him are just dying left and right. Until the end of the play, the whole stage is just littered with corpses, and finally including his own and the dead uncle that he should have killed to begin with. And that's, don't do that, right? So there's a catharsis that that's part of the cathartic motivational. So there is a cathartic aspect to cathartic motivational heroes. They should show us some moral failings that we need to know, hey, we shouldn't do that. But the motivational is incredibly important, because the motivational tells us, it shows us in the same character, it shows us the moral failing, and then it shows them get up, dust themselves off, and be better. So Spider-Man is a great example. He's the example I always give. He's my go-to example, but I'll give some others. But he's the one who gets these powers, and then what does he do with them? Immediately, he wants to make money, whether it's to, in a more altruistic telling of it, help his Aunt May. But then a lot of tellings of it, he just wants to finally, take care of himself, for crying out loud. He's been poor for so long, get a good car, get some ladies or whatever. And so he uses those powers for his own agenda there, his own good. And then that backfires on him, right? And the best tellings of the story, it's where he lets the thug go who would eventually kill Uncle Ben. And he realizes, with great power comes great responsibility. I made some bad choices here, but that's not who I am. I'm gonna be better. I'm gonna try to be better. And that's what we love about cathartic motivational heroes so much, because they show us that, hey, it's okay when we screw up. When we screw up, we don't have to say, well, might as well just be a villain or an anti-hero. I screwed up the whole hero thing. No, it shows us that, yeah, we are going to screw up, but we can try again, and we can get better, and we can improve. And so that's why cathartic motivational heroes are so important, and they tend to run rampant. They're far more ubiquitous out there than aspirational heroes, as it should be. But even cathartic motivational heroes don't work within their universe unless they have an aspirational standard to look up to. Whether it's Spider-Man looking up to Captain America, or all of the characters, all of the Jedi, in the Star Wars EU looking up to Luke and the examples that he set and so forth. That's that they need that standard to strive toward. You mentioned My Hero Academia. Yeah, I mean, even the other, not even just the student heroes, but the other professional heroes, even what's his name, the number 2 hero, the Heat, who becomes the number 1 hero, Todoroki's father. I can't think of his name right now. But even he, when All Might loses his powers and he becomes kind of the number 1 ranked hero, he goes to All Might like, how do you do this? How do we do this? And there's this wonderful episode where he's learning that he truly has to give his all and lay it on the line to save people,